Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here with us this afternoon. I'm Katie Earle. I coordinate the University Express program, and we're here with Rhonda Hoffman from the Grosvenor Room at Central Library. Thanks, Rhonda.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
I'll always welcome you back. And before we get started with the presentation today, excuse me, that's just my computer telling me I have to run this class, but I am. So, quick housekeeping stuff because we have some new folks. We are recording the session as you just heard, and I'll try to post it on the website in the near future, and we'll get that handout to you too once the class is over. We'd hope you participate with us today and ask as many questions and give as many comments as you have. So if you're new to us, you'll communicate with us through the Q&A panel. So if you're on a computer, that's the lower right-hand side of your screen. Click that, expand it, send your questions right to me. And if you're on a tablet or smartphone, touch your screen. That brings up your control panel. You'll click the button that has 3 dots. There's your Q&A. So we hope you participate with us. I'd like to thank the sponsors of our program, which is my Department of Senior Services, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, and Wegmans for all their help. And Senior Services is at 858-8526 if you ever need anything. All right, so our star of the show today. Rhonda Hoffman is a genealogy specialist at Central Library in downtown Buffalo. She is a Master of Library Science from the University of Buffalo and a Bachelor of Arts in History from SUNY Geneseo. Rhonda has been researching her own family history for over 2 decades and has served on the board of the Western New York Genealogical Society since 2011. She's currently the editor of the Society's quarterly journal. Rhonda volunteers for Search Angels, which is an organization that helps adoptees find their biological families using DNA testing and traditional genealogy research. Rhonda, thanks for always being here. Go ahead.
You're welcome. Thank you for everyone who's attending today. Our topic is getting started with Italian genealogy. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Grosvenor Room, which is where I work, it's at the Central Library in downtown Buffalo. And there we have genealogy, local history, maps, rare books, and music scores. The only time you would ever have to make an appointment to come to the Grosvenor Room is if you'd like to view a rare book. Any other time you can come, you don't need an appointment, and we're open the same hours as the Central Library. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a handout. It'll be emailed to participants after the class. All of the websites and databases that I talk about will be listed. All of my major points will be listed, and my contact information will be listed on that handout as well. Our agenda today is going to talk about Italian immigration, the Grosvenor Room resources on Buffalo's Italian community, finding the Italian city or town of birth of your immigrant ancestors, Italian record translation tools, and online Italian vital records. So first about Italian immigration. The heaviest migration was after Italian unification, mainly from 1880 through 1914. Many people left Italy because they lost land, because there were high taxes and interest rates, due to inflation, and because of crop failures. It was also a bit easier to travel at that time frame because there was less travel time due to the development of steamships, as well as decreased costs of travel. Most of those who left were working class and working age men, especially those between 15 and 34 years old. Most Italian immigrants went to the US, Argentina, and Brazil, with smaller concentration to Canada and Australia. Birds of passage are temporary immigrants. From 1880 to 1924, 4.5 million Italians came to the US, but less than half stayed. These individuals came to the US and other locations in order to earn money and improve their lives back in Italy. Their goals were usually to purchase land, buy a larger house, or open a business in Italy. Men from the same Italian town or province often traveled together to the US, but didn't necessarily work or settle in the same locations. Formal and informal social networks developed, which helped birds of passage choose a migration route, how to travel, how to finance their trip, where to live, and how to find a job. Sometimes intended birds of passage may have decided to permanently settle. Of those who permanently settled, they may have traveled to the US to work multiple times before staying. And sometimes they stayed for numerous years before going back to Italy. So they may have done this maybe for 10 years and then finally returned to Italy. US immigrants often let new immigrants or birds of passage stay in their home before they permanently settled in the US. This is the 1900 US federal census, and here we see an example of a likely bird of passage. Down here at the bottom, we see Michael Cristofalo listed as a boarder with the Perillo family, and he's a young man of working age. He's 29 years old. He's listed as an alien immigrating to the US in 1893, which means he was in the US for 7 years. He may have gone back to Italy to get married and came back to the US to earn money because he is listed as being married for less than a year. Chain migration is when an immigrant settles in the US and then other townspeople follow them. Sometimes entire villages or towns relocated. There's an example of this in one of the library's scrapbooks. In this article on Buffalo's Little Italy, one of the individuals interviewed states, of our town, which had a population of about 12,000 in Italy, about 8,000 are here in Buffalo. It's almost like the removal of city from Italy to Buffalo. The town that he was from was Valedolmo, Sicily. The article also states, it talks about a Mr. Banchetti. It says he was stationed at Scranton, Pennsylvania before he came to Buffalo and had worked in the coal mine industry there. He states that there was a strike there and that many Italians working there came to Buffalo until operations resumed. This is a great clue to where your Buffalo ancestors may have once lived. The article states that Dr. C.H. Borzarelli came to Buffalo when he was 12 from Valedolmo. He says, when our family came to Buffalo, the number of Italians coming here was so small that the members of the colony here all knew when others contemplated leaving the old country when they would land in New York and the train upon which they would arrive in Buffalo. When anything of that kind happened, we all went to meet the train to welcome the newcomers. We also prepared entertainment for them for several days, but now that has all changed. So that's just kind of some great background. Maybe that's the kind of reception that your ancestor got when they came, if they were one of the early Italian settlers in Buffalo. The library has a collection of about 400 scrapbooks. The scrapbook that information came from was Buffalo's foreign population. It's a great place to learn about Buffalo's Italian community and pioneers, churches, schools, festivals, population, neighborhoods, and societies. Here we see an image of the drying and packing room in a Buffalo macaroni factory. Here we see some little girls jumping rope in Little Italy. Here's some boys posing in the street. One of them has a bat and they're all kind of showing off their muscles. And here are some immigrant women tending to their children in the neighborhood. A great place to learn about this and other Buffalo Italian resources is on the library's website. The Grosvenor Room has put its collection of research guides online. You can read them or download them. There's an Italian genealogy guide under the Ethnic and Immigrant Genealogy heading. The guide details Italian American history books related to Buffalo as well as other sources. One of those sources is a book called Family and Community, Italian Immigration in Buffalo, 1880 through 1930. It details the Italian way of life in Buffalo, including family structure and roles, employment, immigration history, clubs and organization, and politics. It's also available for checkout at the Central Library, or you could have it transferred to another branch. There's also a book called The Italians of Lackawanna, New York, Steelworkers, Merchants, and Gardeners. Topics of interest include migration, the Lackawanna Italian experience, assimilation, neighborhoods, religious life, businesses, professions, and unions, organizations, politics, and there are many photos and information about individuals. The Western New York Genealogical Society's collection is in the Grosvenor Room. Their collection includes a set of 9 binders called Biographical Information on Lackawanna Italians. It includes many obituaries and death notices, marriage announcements, anniversary announcements, and other newspaper articles. We also have something called the Local History File in the Grosvenor Room. It's a card index of newspaper and periodical articles about people, places, and events in the Buffalo area. The first thing to try is to look up your family member's name in alphabetical order, and there could be a card about them. So here we see a Charles R. Borzarelli, and there's some different articles that he's associated with. You may not understand the citations in the file, but you can ask a librarian for assistance in finding the resources that are cited. Another good topic to look under is Italian clubs of Buffalo. Club entries will often be about elected officers, so maybe you'll see your ancestor belonged to a certain club. There's also a general subject section called Italians in Buffalo, and on this card, some of the examples are they list these articles on rising young Italians, and they'll name these different people, and that'll be an article about those individuals. So next we're going to talk about gearing up to research in Italian records. The first thing you'll want to know is you'll want to determine their original Italian given names. A handy guide to name translations is available through Angelo Coniglio's website. He's a local Italian genealogist. You can go from English to Italian and Sicilian names, and it tells you how to pronounce those. So for example, if your ancestor in the US went by Al or Albert, it will tell you that that could refer to Alberto, Alfonso, Gioberto, Libertino, or Umberto in Italian and Sicilian. The next thing you'll want to do is find their foreign place of birth. This is something called the Social Security Applications and Claims Index. It may provide the place of birth. The date range covered in the database is from 1936 to 2007, but it's most complete from the 1960s to 2007. Only deceased people are listed in this index, and not everyone is included in this index. So here we can see Julia D'Amico D'Angelo, and we can see it gives her birth date, it gives her place of birth, a specific location in Italy, her death date, and also her parents' names, which may be helpful in finding some of her records. We will see repeat names, just like we do in the US in Italian records. So knowing the parents' names will help correctly identify your ancestor once you start in Italian records. That database is in Ancestry Library Edition, as well as Ancestry.com if you subscribe to it. You can use Ancestry Library Edition at every one of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library locations. And for a temporary time period, due to the pandemic, the company is let you use it from home with your library card. They've extended the time period that you can use it from home through us through December of this year. The next thing that you'll want to look into are naturalization records, especially if your ancestor naturalized from 1906 and later. That's because there were very detailed standardized forms used beginning in this time period. Naturalization is the process of becoming a U.S. citizen. There's an Erie County Naturalization Record Index in FamilySearch. FamilySearch is the free genealogy website of the LDS Church. FamilySearch has records from all over the world, and they've digitized many of them and put them online for free. You will have to create a free account with FamilySearch to view records on the site. They'll never make you pay any fee, and they also don't spam you in your emails. So to get to the naturalization index, you go to the search menu and click on catalog. Do a place search for Erie, New York. Then you'll see a list of categories of records that FamilySearch has for Erie County. And you want to go to the naturalization and citizenship category, and then choose the naturalization records 1831 to 1906 that has the index 1831 to 1930. Then you just look, you can see how it says card index here, and then it's got a name range. So you just look for the right alphabetic range for your ancestor. And then you click on the camera that is in the same line as the right alphabetic range. This is an example card for Vincenz Alonghi. It lists his present address, 83 Maryland Street in Buffalo. It lists he's from Italy. It lists his date of birth in 1874. It lists his date of and port of arrival. So he came in 1920 to New York City. It lists his date of naturalization, which was in 1925, and it lists the witnesses to his naturalization. These cards often have information on the back side, so be sure that you forward the image to see what might be on the back. It gives the certificate of naturalization number at the top, and then it also lists his children, their dates of birth, and the country that they were born in, which is Italy. You can obtain copies often through county clerk's offices. Multiple courts may have naturalized your ancestor. Erie County has naturalization records through 1929. You may also find records through a U.S. district court beginning in late 1906. There is an index to Western New York naturalizations from 1907 through 1966 in FamilySearch. This is the index for the federal district court. These are keyword searchable. When you get your results, your search results, it will tell you the year that the person was naturalized. The library also has that same index on microfilm. If you come to the library to use the film, you'll get a little more information. You'll get the exact date of naturalization, you'll get their petition number, and this is like a volume and an entry number in the naturalization records. Once you have the information about your ancestor, you would then order those records through the National Archives. Last I knew, they weren't doing lookups due to COVID, but they might be doing it. So you can check with them. Once you get the naturalization papers, one thing that will be included is a certificate of arrival, which will give the arrival date and ship name. So he came on April 16th, 1914 on the ship called the Berlin. And then you'll see the Declaration of Intent. This was the first document that your ancestor would have filed to become an American citizen. In addition to your ancestor's occupation and address, Diego is listed as a laborer. You'll also get the town of birth. Campobello di Licata, Italy, is his place of birth. He was born on the 12th of August in 1882 and it gives his current address in Buffalo. And then it gives his immigration information again, that he came from Palermo, Italy, on the vessel Berlin. And it tells his last foreign residence was Campobello de Licata, Italy, and that he's married. It gives his wife's name, Giuseppe Pina, and that she was also born in Campobello, Italy. And then it tells the date and port of arrival on the bottom of the page. The other document that will be included is the petition to naturalization. After filing a declaration of intent and waiting the required time frame, which was usually 2 to 5 years, the petition for naturalization would be filed. This is the final document for naturalization. It includes almost the same information as the declaration of intent does. It also includes his date of marriage and children's names, dates, and places of birth. You can see them right here. And then the bottom of the form lists witnesses' names, addresses, and occupations. And always look at those witnesses because they may be family members or people that are from their same hometown. The next record type, which might tell born place of birth, are church records. To find Italian churches in an American city, try looking through city directories. In older directories, you'll usually find a section in the beginning of the book that lists churches by denomination. This is a Buffalo directory. You can see that it points out in parentheses the ethnicity of the different churches. So I've boxed off these that are Italian here. If ethnicity is not stated in the directory you're looking in, look for a priest or minister's names that are of Italian descent. This is a section from the Grosvenor Room's Italian genealogy guide that I showed you earlier. It lists what Italian church records that we carry and also names Italian churches that the library doesn't carry. So maybe these other churches are still in existence and you could contact those churches about their records. So if the library doesn't carry the records and the church is still in existence, always check with the church. If the church closed and merged with another church, check with the church it merged with to see if they have the records. This is a great online resource. It's a Buffalo church map that was created by the Buffalo History Museum. So all of these markers are Buffalo churches. You can put your ancestor's address in here where the arrow is, and it will zoom in and it will show you what churches were nearest your Buffalo's home. These markers are color coded by church denomination. So for example, the red is Catholic, the brown is evangelical or Lutheran, and there's tons of other religions represented here. Many Buffalo church records are also online through FamilySearch. To find them, go to the FamilySearch catalog, just like we did earlier, and search for Buffalo or whatever city or town your ancestor lived in. And you can restrict the records to online and then click search. And then you'll get your categories of records. So you choose the church record category, and then you look through the list for the church of interest. And then you click on the church when you find it. So then it will open up the record and you look to the bottom of the record for film digital notes. And if you see a camera, it means it's been digitized, and you can click on the camera and then browse through image by image through those records. Often the church records are not indexed, but sometimes they are. This is an example of a church marriage record. This is St. Anthony's in Buffalo. Church marriage records often list the place of birth of an immigrant. So we can see here, this is the groom's name, and it actually lists his parents' names, which is also very helpful, including his mother's maiden name. And then this is where he was born. I think it says Bavaria with an E, but I think it's actually Sovaria because I couldn't find this location. And then it lists the wife's name and her parents, and then where she was from. She was from the same location. Oftentimes, especially Catholic church records are in Latin, so you might have to have a Latin dictionary handy. U.S. immigrants' children's baptismal records are also a good place to look. So if they came over and had kids here, look in the American church records, and they will usually list the parents' place of birth. So this is a 1900 baptismal record from St. Anthony's, and where it says ex loco, this is where the parent was born, and it says the town's name as well as the province's name here for both the father and then the mother. Next, you're going to look in passenger lists. You'll get clues to when your ancestor came to the U.S. from census records. The U.S. federal censuses from 1900 to 1930 and New York State censuses for 1905, 15, and 25, they all either list the year of immigration to the U.S. or the number of years that the person has been in the U.S. And you can find census records in Ancestry Library Edition, as well as numerous other genealogy websites. Here's an example census from 1910. And the column here that I blocked off, the years that you see listed here are when these individuals came to the US. The other column, it tells whether they were naturalized or whether they were still an alien. Don't take these years as written in stone. I found that sometimes they may be off by a year or two, but at least you've got an estimate of when they came to the US. So once you have a time frame, you can search for passenger lists. Ancestry is the best place to search for passenger lists, in my opinion. Good data to input is the immigrant's name. So we have Vincenzo Allegati. And a good thing to put in is an estimated birth year, and then an estimated year of arrival. And then you can click search and it'll search the whole passenger list collection. Ancestry has passenger lists for all over the US, as well as some foreign ports as well. So in the hits, the first hit that came up looks to be correct according to the data that I knew. So you just click that record and the passenger list will open up. So down at the bottom here, I found Vincenzo Allegati, and it gives that he lived most recently in Montedoro, Sicily. It lists that the nearest relative left where he came from, so in Sicily, is his wife, Maria Puma, that he is going to settle in Buffalo, New York, and his daughter is listed below with him. There's usually 2 pages to a passenger list, so always make sure that you look on the next page. And here we find more information down at the bottom again. They're going to live with Vincenzo's brother-in-law, and it lists his name here and his address in Buffalo. It tells that he intends on settling forever in the US. It gives a physical description, so we see his height, his hair and eye color, that he has a scar on his face. And it also tells that they were also born, in this last column, it tells that they were born in Montedoro. Now, if we were to look more closely on that first page of the passenger list, and we look, there's a number of men listed here, and you'll notice that they often list their wife as the nearest relative left in Italy. And you'll note that they have different last names than their husband. So in our example, Mr. Allegati's wife was listed as Maria Puma. It's important to know that Italian women used maiden names in important and official documents. So you will see their maiden name listed in these types of documents and not their married name. If you have trouble finding them in Ancestry, we have a great printed book set called Italians to America, list of passengers arriving at US ports from 1880 through 1905. And this set is still being published, so more years will be published eventually. It's by Mr. Ira Glazer, so that's another place to look. If you want to learn more places where you can find where your immigrant ancestor was from, we have a guide on our website, and there will be a link to this in your handout. It's called Where is My Immigrant Ancestor From? So you'll get more ideas there. So once you find where your ancestor is from, you may need help locating the town. There's a great free website. It's part of Stephen Morse, his collection of websites, if some of you are familiar with him. It's called Searching the Italian Town Database in One Step. So you can put in the name of a town that you have found in the records and then search, and it will give you a list of possibilities. Sometimes there are repeat words in town names. You can see Sclafani. They're all in Palermo, the Palermo area. Another thing that you may want to keep in mind is I mentioned that many Catholic Church records are in Latin. Sometimes location names are written in Latin too. So if you can't figure out what a location is, try to translate it from Latin to English. Here you can see the province is listed as Panarui, and when you translate that from Latin to English, that means Palermo. So that's how I figured out that one. And I just used Google Translate for that. A good Italian website to know about is called Comuni Italiani. It is in Italian, but your internet browser should be able to translate the site. So usually to the top right of your screen, you'll see where you can click to make it in English. So if you're looking for more information on a town, you can click the list of Italian municipalities. Then you'll get an alphabetic range list. So I'm looking for Sclafani again, and I click SC. And then I choose the one I'm looking for. And then it'll give me more information about the town. So over to the left here, you can see that the site provides details about the town, like the region, the province, the area. It gives the population. To the bottom right-hand side that I've boxed off here in red, it gives a link to the official town's website and a way to email the town. So this may be useful if you need to order records. If you choose to translate the web page, keep in mind that whatever translator you're using, it will translate every word. So that includes names of people or places, and that can be confusing because we want those things to remain in Italian. So here's an example. It gives a nice list, the site gives a nice list of churches in Sclafani. And the first two, Church of San Filippo, Church of San Giacomo, but then it says Mother Church, and that's not helpful because that was translated. If you go back to Italian, you can see the church is called Chiesa Madre. So that's really the name that you want. They want the actual name of the church. So just be careful with that. You can also browse by province. So say you know that your ancestor was from a certain province. You can choose your province. Then you can see the municipalities in an alphabetical list just of that province. So that's another way to look. And then you can see those towns and see which one maybe looks familiar to you if you had a family story or something that your ancestor came from a certain location. Next, a little bit about Italian history, just to understand the records. Italy, just like everywhere else, had lots of changing borders over time. So you can see here's Italy in 1000, and then 1810. You can see how all of these areas changed, who was in control of Italy and the different boundaries. You'll want to thank Napoleon for Italian record keeping. By 1799, Napoleon conquered most of Italy. He unified the country and began civil vital record keeping in 1806, though not every location started in that year. Napoleon was defeated by 1815, and Italy returned to its previous boundaries and rulers. Sicily and southern Italy, so the Kingdom of Naples and Sicily, became the Kingdom of Two Sicilies and began record keeping in 1820. From 1815 to 1870, Italy went through Il Risorgimento, which translates to the resurrection. The goal was to get a free Italy and to unify the country. By about 1870, Italy was unified. By that time also, all regions kept vital records. This is Italy today. Its regions are similar to US states. Its provinces are similar to US counties. And something called a comune is similar to a US town. Before we delve into finding records, you should know a little bit about reading Italian records. For example, the Italian alphabet does not include the letters J, K, W, X, or Y, except in borrowed words from other languages like blue jeans. So if you're trying to decipher a word and you think the letter looks like one of those letters, you can eliminate that letter as a possibility. For example, sometimes the letter I might look like a J or a G might look like a Y, but if you know those letters don't exist, you can eliminate those letters from what you're trying to translate. The FamilySearch has a wiki that is great for learning how to research records related to a particular location. So you can just put the country up here and click search. And one of the things that you'll see on the wiki page for Italy is an Italian genealogical word list. So you can click there, and the list will include words frequently used in genealogical records in Italy. It will also include sample vital records with translations. So you can click, you can see there's different death records, marriage, birth. You can click on those and see what kinds of information are usually in those records. So here's an example. This is a death record. You'll see the Italian text, and then you'll see the English version of that text highlighted in yellow. Many of these birth, death, and marriage records are on standardized forms like you see here. There's also this website, the Italian Script Tutorial. It provides many examples of transcribed and translated records, as well as information on common abbreviations, handwriting, dialects, and a glossary. So next, we're going to look at the vital records. The comune's registered vital records. Again, those are similar to American towns. If you're looking at a large city, records will be split up by neighborhood within those comunes. The records are kept in duplicate. One is kept at the comune and one at the tribunal. A tribunal is similar to a US county court, and it's located at the seat of each province. The tribunal keeps copies for legal purposes, for example, a military draft, and these are accessible by the government only for legal purposes. There's a 75-year waiting period to access vital records, except for close family members. Only comune officials can access the records at their office. You can make a written request to see them, but will not likely be allowed. After 75 years, though, the tribunal copies are sent to the state archive where you may be able to access the records. One great place to look for Italian records, these are generally those tribunal records that have been passed on to the state archives, is Ancestry Library Edition. So how you want to get to them in Ancestry is go to the search menu and click all categories. Then you want to select the right continent. So you pick Europe, and then you choose Italy. And then you'll see a list. I recommend clicking See More About Italy. And then you want to be sure that you select not only just look at the list of what's there for vital records, but click View All Italy Birth, Marriage, and Death Records. And then you'll see unique records that are unique to Italy, but also make sure you look under All Related to Italy. Sometimes I think these aren't categorized all that great. Like some of these are for specific locations in Italy, but they're not underneath the top category. So make sure you look in both categories. So I went ahead and selected a record set in the region of Palermo. And these aren't keyword searchable. You have to browse them page by page. So you would pick the comune of interest. Frazione means a small village outside of the main town, sort of like what we might call hamlets in the US. So you choose the right location. So I'm sticking with that same town I've been mentioning, Sclafani. And then you'll see the record categories listed, and you want to choose the right record of interest. So we will start with death records. And you can see it gives the date range that's included here. This is morti, that means death, from 1862 to 1910 are in here. So it will just pop open and I just kind of scrolled to a particular record. So death records are called atti di morte in Italian. One thing to note is that a neighbor or friend usually reported the death, not a close family member. So sometimes they may not know the right information to provide. And also that the mayor or town official had to view the deceased in order to verify the death. So what I did here is I selected a particular record, and on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see I put that template that I showed you earlier for the acts of death. And if you look at the text, you'll see that it's the same. So we're dealing with one of those standardized forms. So next, I'll just show you what's in a record bit by bit. And this is how I did my translation. I do not speak Italian. It's not as hard as it looks. If you've got one of these forms to follow, you just had to translate the handwritten information. Of course, you know, sometimes handwriting can be difficult to understand. You should know that Italian sentence structure is different than English, so things might kind of sound backwards. So here's the translation of this bit. The year 1178, the day, I think it says 12, but it looks spelled differently than what I found, of February at AM hour 11 and minutes 15 at the town hall. And I went down to the next section. Officers of civil records for the comune of Sclafani appeared Lacurto Vincenzo, of age 70, peasant, domiciled, which means lived in, Sclafani, and Gallo Croce, of age 40, peasant, domiciled at Sclafani, who declared to me that at PM hour 9 and minutes 30 yesterday, in the house located on Avenue Agnello at number 2, had died Trippi Giuseppe, of 9 days, so that means 9 days old, peasant, born in Sclafani, of Filippo, that's the dad's name, peasant, living in Sclafani, and Taraka, I had a little trouble reading that, Rosaria, peasant, living in Sclafani, unmarried. So the baby, that means the baby was unmarried, but those are the parents' names, Filippo, and you assume the last name is same as the person who is deceased, and then Rosaria, that's her maiden name, Taraka. And then we have the witnesses listed here. Orazio Leon, 40 years old, a peasant, and Rosaline Cimento, age 70, a peasant, and they both live in Sclafani. Next, we'll get into birth records. These are called atti di nascita. So same thing in ancestry. I just looked through the list of records that are there, nati, and you can see the different date ranges that are there. And then I translated the birth record. So the type of information that you'll find first you'll see a date, and you might think that that's the date of birth, but it's actually when the person came to report the birth. So the 28th day of June at 10 a.m. in 1889 in the town hall, Geraci Luciano Cindeo, with the Officer of Civil Records for the Comune Sclafani, appeared Giolimo Dubolino, of age 54, property owner, lived in Sclafani, who declared that at 9 a.m., or I should say 9:15 a.m. on the 27th of the current month, in the house lived on Via Luga at number 16, Leone Carmela, formerly Giacomo, his wife, living with him. So that is the actual, what was listed there was the actual date of birth. So they had a female child, and they gave the name of Maria Angela, and then that gives the witnesses names, their ages, and their professions and their town of residence. Next, marriages. Marriages usually took place at the bride's parish, not the groom's. The age of majority, so that was when someone could choose their own partner, was 25 for men and 23 for women. Otherwise, they had to get their parents' permission. There were multiple steps involved in Italian marriages. This created several documents of interest to genealogists, so that's good for us. The first step was a marriage bans, usually either called publicazione, notificazione, or memorandum. This was, they declared their intent to marry. They posted on the church or city hall door for at least 2 Sundays before the wedding their intent to marry. It was read aloud at church. This gave individuals time to object to the marriage. One copy was made, and it was sent to the tribunal at the end of the year. After 70 years, these are sent to the state archives. And marriage bans had to be performed at both parishes if the bride and groom were from different communes. So here you can see matrimony, and you can see the publicazione. So that's what we were looking for. It looks like for a time period, they also used memorandums. And then here is that. It gives the date of the ban. It gives the couple's name, their ages, the town they lived in. It gives their parents' names, including mother maiden name. It also lists the witnesses' names, their ages, and their profession. And then they also did have to present a series of documents in order to marry. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And it lists what documents were presented. The marriage itself is called an atti di matrimonio. This is from 1865 forward. During this time frame, they had to have a civil marriage. They could have a religious ceremony too, but there was a power struggle between 1865 and 1875 between the church and the state over who could register marriages. Some did not have to register, some did not have a civil marriage registered because of this. And if this was the case, the child would be illegitimate. They may have married later, had a civil marriage later to correct this. So here we can see matrimony are also in that same record set. So that's what I clicked on to find these records. So here's a sample marriage act. It gives the date and place of the marriage, the couple's names, where they lived, their ages, their profession. It gives their parents' names. You can see it points out that the parents were deceased here. You can see deceased, deceased. And then it gives witness names as well. Sometimes before 1865, instead of a marriage act, you had something called a marriage promise. The Atto di Solenne Promessa di Celebrare il Matrimonio. This was especially true south of Rome. What would happen is first you would file a ban, then a promise, then you would get married in a Catholic church. The promise often occurred just hours before the Catholic church marriage. The promise had to be posted on the church door or town hall door. It could be done just before the marriage. The priest was given 2 copies of the promise. He filled in the marriage details, and the first copy was given back to City Hall. The priest used the second copy to create a parish marriage record. So here you can see those are in the matrimony section here too in Ancestry. The marriage promise had the same information as a marriage act, but includes the location of the marriage. So this would be the church to the right of the page over here. And this one just says the rector of this commune. So there is probably just one church in this commune. Then I mentioned you needed other documents to get married. These are supplementary marriage documents. They are called processetti or allegati. The documents that had to be included were the birth records of the bride or groom, permission of the parents. If a parent was deceased, you would include their death certificates. The next person who could give permission was the paternal grandfather. So you may find a death certificate of a paternal grandfather in there too, and possibly death certificates of grandmothers if all the previous are deceased. You had to give a copy of the marriage ban. If they couldn't afford the marriage fee, a certificate of poverty, an extract of the marriage promise, if that was the right time frame for those, death records of deceased spouses, and one copy was sent to the tribunal at the end of the year. And after 70 years, these are sent to the state archives. So you can see here they're listed as Allegati, and you can see the different time frames. So you just click on the right time frame for your ancestor. And I wondered how difficult these would be to go through since they're separate from the marriage record themselves. But all but the very early records included a nice cover page, which included the couple's names on it. And they were grouped roughly in order by date. And this number here matched their marriage certificate number that I had found earlier. So you can see, oops, I apologize. You can see that the couple's names are listed here also, and you've got the year here. So it wasn't hard to find them. I didn't translate all of these, but I just wanted to show you in general. These are the extracts of their birth record as well as the baptismal record of the groom. So essentially it's a transcription. Then this is the same, the birth record and baptismal record of the bride. So that's nice. You can see what church they were associated with if there was more than one. Then there's an extract of a death record of the bride's former husband. And then here's the extract of the marriage banns, which we talked about earlier. FamilySearch is also a website where you can find Italian records. So you want to go to search the catalog. You want to search for the town name that you found that your ancestor was from. And once you get your hits, you'll see there might be church records, but we're looking at civil records. So you can click on civil records, and then you'll see a list of different records. So you choose whatever is the right time frame. And if you go down to the bottom of the page, you'll see film digital notes. And you just, see what records you're looking for. You can see these are all marriage records, and you can see the time frames that are covered. If you see a little magnifying glass, it means the records are also keyword searchable. So I chose one of the keyword searchable records. I put in the bride's name and the groom's name, and I got a hit. And then when you click on your hit, you get a link to where you can click on the record itself. And then it'll take you right to that individual record, and you can browse through the records if you wanted to too. Another good place to see what's in FamilySearch is that FamilySearch Research Wiki. So what you would do is you'll see a map when you search for Italy. You just pick on a particular province of interest, and then you'll see where there's information on researching Italian records, but then there's a nice link to Italian online genealogy records, and you can see a list of what's in FamilySearch with links to those records, so you can pop right into those record sets. The next thing is a free website by the Italian State Archives. It's called Antenati. It is in Italian, but you can see over in the top right, you can choose English. So what you want to do is you want to go in the section called the land and the sources. And you'll see what records are in here. These little markers are the state archives for those areas, and these records are color coded. So green means those records, so Palermo, those records are complete. Yellow means they're in the process of doing those records. So some are done, some aren't. Red means they're still digitizing those records, and black means the civil registry files are not available at that state archives. So you're not going to find those records on this site. Then what you want to do is some of these records are keyword searchable. You can, on that home page, you can click find the names. And you can also check the indexing status, because not everything is indexed. So you can click on that link, and you'll see if the region you're looking for has been indexed, and it tells you what has been indexed. Then you could keyword search. I searched for the last name Russo in a place called Avellino, and you get your hits. It seems whenever you move to a different page on this website, you have to translate it. It's like you stay on one page in English, but then you go to the next page and it'll be back in Italian again. So if you wanted it in English, you'd have to translate it again. But here's your hits. It's laid out nicely. It would be easy to translate if you had a dictionary. If you do translate, I don't recommend translating your hits, because at the top here, I think it's pretty understandable. You can see the place, you can see the date, you can see what type of record it is, you can see the person's name up here, and then their parents' names. But then if you translate it, you can see it looks really weird. See all those dots in those locations? It doesn't make any sense. So be careful there. You might want to leave this in Italian. So going back to the Italian way, apri means to open the record, and then you can see the record itself. And you can click on the image and it will enlarge it for you. Just like the same things we were seeing in FamilySearch. If the records for the town you're looking for aren't indexed, you can also browse the registries. So you can choose the right region. Then it'll have a link to the records. It's kind of, you feel like you're jumping through hoops sometimes on this website because you have to click a lot to get down to it. But here's the location. And then you'll see the types of records here. What's nice is this website often has 10-year indexes. They would index their records every year, but then every 10 years, they would do 10-year indexes. So you can see there are marriages and deaths, and you have to click the right time frame. And then this doesn't mean anything for research. You just have to click there. And then you can go through image by image through those records. Here's the index, and what's nice about these indexes is that this is a marriage index. You can see the groom's name, then the bride's name. But what's nice is it lists their father's name and their mother's name too. So you've got the parents' names, which helps show you have the right person, and then the date and the number of marriage record number. Words to think about when you're looking at these records is fu means the late. Furono is the plural of this. So if you see fu and their parents' names, it means that parent is deceased. You might also see the word defunto, which also means deceased. So here you can see fu Salvatore. D means of. If you see D, it means that person is still living, but you can see a bunch of fus. So those parents are deceased at the time that they got married. What's nice also about these indexes is it's a way to see the brothers and sisters of your ancestor. If it lists the parents' names, you can browse through these and see who else has the same parents' names. And you can locate maybe siblings that you didn't know your ancestor had. And then you could look at their records. This is just another example. Sometimes records are grouped according to a time frame. So I remember I talked about Napoleon records. You can see this is the Napoleon time frame. And I mentioned the Restoration time frame. And then after everything was unified, these are the records after Italy was unified. So sometimes they're by time frame. Just have a couple more things. If you don't find that your records are online, you will have to write for the records. So the U.S. Embassy has some nice forms to help you write for records. You can click on a form for birth certificate, marriage certificate, or death certificate. And you'll see it's nice because it's got in Italian, but then it has the translation in parentheses. So you just fill out this and send it to the right comune of interest. And then also the FamilySearch Wiki has a letter writing guide, and it gives sample text. It'll give the English and then the Italian version if you want to write for a particular record to a comune. And that is everything that I have for you today. Just a reminder, your handout will be emailed to you after the class, and all of my websites that I mentioned and all the major points will be listed, as well as my contact information. Do feel free to ask me any questions that you think of later on.
Thank you, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
I can only imagine how long it takes you to put together these presentations with the arrows and the boxes, and it's really wonderful.
Thank you. I have fun. I really like putting together presentations.
Well, I can tell your attention to detail is amazing.
Thank you.
And because of that, you answered actually quite a few of the questions, but we have some here. And so this is, sorry if you said this, but how does it work to order records internationally online?
I am not aware of online ordering. I would go to that Comuni Italiani website and click on the link to the Comune of Interest to possible to order online, or you could look at their website to see if there might be an order online, and you could try to, the sites will be in Italian. Some of the larger locations might have, an English version, but you can translate the website using your web browser, and you could see if maybe there's an online order form. But you might just want to email them to see if you can order it online and ask what the link is to order it. And I would use maybe the FamilySearch Wiki that I just showed you at the end for different phrases that you could use. You might have to try to, whip out a dictionary to help you translate, to ask questions.
Okay, thanks, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
We have a couple more questions here. Is that okay with you time-wise?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so this one is, does the library only have records for Buffalo residents? I am looking for Italian immigrants in Rochester.
Yes, we might have some histories on the Rochester area, but we don't have things like birth, death, and marriages for Rochester. The Ancestry Library Edition, if you're looking for dates of those events, it does have the New York State Vital Records Index in there. So you could find dates of births, deaths, and marriages in there. You may actually find some marriage records. Some of the marriage records are actually in Ancestry for an early time frame, but we don't collect vital records outside of the Western New York area, and Rochester isn't included. We have mostly Buffalo and Erie County.
Okay, thanks, Rhonda.
Mm-hmm.
This next one is, do you have any tips to break through when you feel like you've hit a wall?
It's always good. A couple of things is have somebody else look at your records, look at your research for you, and they might think of other avenues. So you might look, like if you're in the Buffalo area, a good thing is the Western New York Genealogical Society. If you do Facebook, they have a Facebook page that anyone can ask questions. So you might want to post some information and see if someone might have a tip, or come to one of their meetings. Right now they're doing online meetings and ask questions. So have other people look. But then also I recommend setting your research aside for a while and then coming back to it with fresh eyes. Those are probably the main ways, because I can't tell you how many times I've been trying to seek a piece of information and I had previously collected documents, not realizing a piece of information that I needed was on one of those documents, because at the time I wasn't looking for that piece of information. And then I go back and look at all of my records again and I find the information I'm looking for. Or maybe you just read a certain fact that leads you in a different direction by looking at those records that you already have. And of course, reading, if you're looking for a certain fact about a person, reading about those records, that might give you tips on other records to look in for that topic.
Thanks, Rhonda. That's great advice. Okay, we've got some comments here. I'm just going to read this last question, then I'll get to the comments. This one is, do you know when the 1950 federal census will be available?
Yes, in April of 2022. I think I'm not sure if the census date was the 1st or the 15th, but whatever the official census date for that census was, is when they'll be released. You can look on the National Archives website. They're kind of gearing up for it. So you might see blog posts on their website about the census and what kind of information it included. If you Google 1950 census instructions, you'll find the list of the questions they asked there. So I'm very excited. I can't wait for that census to be released.
Ah, thanks, Rhonda. Okay, so comments. We have, wow, this was great. Thank you so much. We have, thank you. It was very informative. Let's see. We have, thanks so much. Ready to jump into my husband's family to start researching in Italy. I love your seminars.
Yay.
And then we have just a comment on ancestry. Indices are usually included for each year of records for birth, death, and marriages, so they are good to search first to save time.
Yep, if there's a search form, definitely search. Most things are indexed, but a lot of the Italian records are only indexed on the state archives, that Antonati website.
Thank you. Well, Rhonda, is always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we'll get that handout to you shortly, but enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.